Congress finally allows Clarence Thomas to have his interracial marriage. Oh, gay people get it too.
A final vote now on the marriage equality bill known as the Respect for Marriage Act. It codifies the right to marry regardless of sexual orientation. It also repeals the Defense of Marriage Act and ensures the legality of same-sex and interracial marriages. The bill is supported by the White House. A simple majority needed for passage.
Yeas are 267, and the nays are 157. The bill is passed.
Well, spurred by the opinion written by Justice Clarence Thomas after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, the U.S. House of Representatives finally voted on the Respect for Marriage Act, first proposed in 2009. The act repeals President Clinton's Defense of Marriage Act and requires the federal government to recognize any marriage that would be recognized in one of the U.S. states. While states will still be able to legally ban marriages based on their own laws, including the marriages protected by Loving v. Virginia, as long as at least one state still has legal marriages, the federal government must offer equal protections and benefits for the purposes of immigration, taxes, or similar. The Respect for Marriage Act passed the House with a 267 to 157 vote, with all Democrats and 47 Republicans voting in favor for it. Many experts still expect the bill to stall in the Senate, where 10 of the 50 Republicans will have to vote in the affirmative in order for the bill to pass. Big news? Not big news.
It's mixed news. I think this should have been done a long time ago before it became critical. This goes back to even Roe versus Wade, where they could have codified it in law, and then it ended up having to go back to the Supreme Court. And there's all those antiquated laws became, I can't remember what the term was, reenacted. So if lynching was on the books, and now that the court said it's okay, in essence, that's not truly related.
Zombie laws.
Zombie laws.
That they
Thank
get
you.
re-implemented. Right.
Yeah. So I think it's great that many Republicans on the
Were you
House side.
surprised? 47? Did that surprise you? That
No,
number?
because they weren't going to win anyway. So they spoke their piece, and there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
At least in my mind. The Senate side is a different story.
There's some of these things, we really have to move into 2022 with some things. One thing is language, right? When you talk about an interracial marriage, it's like, are we still using that term race when it's not real and it's a social construct? There's really no such thing as an interracial marriage, right? We're all the same race. All the human beings are from the same race.
For clarity, it would be better to say a black and white marriage.
I don't know what they would say. How would they want to define it? But the way that they're defining it isn't correct, right? We're all from the same race, and now if they want to continue to keep separating us somehow,
so it's just
then you can say maybe cultural differences or cultural separation, or I don't know what you want to say, but I think that we get caught up in these terms that aren't true, and then they start to legislate behind things that aren't even true.
Right.
And it's like, let's stop doing that. Like when I think about gay marriage, I remember back in the 80s when all of the gay guys that couldn't get into the hospital to see their partners who were dying, they couldn't make medical decisions, their taxes, and that's why gay people wanted to get married. Right? They didn't want to get married because they wanted to stand under God or whatever they say and like make this. It was like, no, because we need the same legal rights as everyone else, right?
I wanted to be under the chuppah.
and so I think we need to get up to speed with a lot of these
I want to
things,
ask you specifically on the reference that we kind of tongue-in-cheek even say in the headline of reporting this news about Clarence Thomas. He shoots the cannon across the gay bow of saying, oh, we're going to revisit this. And likely a 5-4 decision in 2015 could become 5-4 in the difference, assuming that we keep Roberts.
Right.
And if we don't keep Roberts, it's going to be 6-3. Thomas, understanding what you're saying about interracial marriage being an incorrect term, but the Supreme Court, that's what they called it in 1967, and assuming that you follow that trend of the way they defined it, that right was not assessed to people of color until 1967. What do you think is going on with the Clarence Thomas to challenge gay marriage, even sodomy laws? I know you don't speak for all black people or people of color, but what do you suspect is going on for him?
I think what I see happening is the Supreme Court and some originalists, some people who went to school for far too long and they've had lots of debates about things that really aren't that important, and they should stay in educational settings, right? To debate,
Intellectual.
right? Have taken these things to heart, and so they're being very literal about things, right? Like the word is not in the Constitution, and so we shouldn't operate that way. Leaving things, pushing things to Congress, like you talked about with Roe versus Wade, that Congress has the power to codify that, right? Pushing things back to states, hoping that states will just do the right thing on their own without having this huge hand kind of making these decisions, right? The only problem is that document was written back in the 1700s. I personally don't care what these guys thought about in the 1700s.
But let's come back to my question. He was afforded voting rights in constitutional interpretation by the Supreme Court, being a person of color.
Right.
He was afforded the right in 1967 by the Supreme Court to marry a person that was not identified as a person of color.
Right.
So what's going through his mind of what he wants to revisit?
Well, that's what I mean. When you sit in those settings and you have these discussions, these intellectual discussions about what is the Constitution, and when you get into these originalist debates about what we should be doing as a Supreme Court and what we really shouldn't be doing as a Supreme Court, it gets far away from common sense.
So
it gets far away from common sense.
You just think it's basically being ridiculous academic.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I think this is important. He did us a huge favor by putting out his agenda. Because it has mobilized the world or our country like I don't think anyone else could have done. And that warning that I'm coming after you is basically what he said. Then puts everyone else on guard that we need to show up, and we need to show up in November.
To the point that you just made, why did we need a Clarence Thomas to wake the LGBTQ community of what's been going on for years now?
Well, we've had this conversation before, like who's paying attention? And what will it take to get people to pay attention? What is that tipping point? What is that thing? And in this case, it seems to have resonated. We hope. We'll see what happens in November.
JD, I'm curious for you. Do you think the lesbians of America, the women in our communities, do they think any different than gay men on this news and the issues related to marriage and Justice Thomas's shot across the bow? Do you think the community, are women right there along with us in the same attitude as gay men, or are there any differences at all?
I think we're people, we all want the same thing. We all want to be able to have those same rights. And I am surprised they would be revisiting this again too now. And
that's
and I think women, we tend to be coupled up sooner and in that role anyway sooner, but to be part of that, of the whole legality of being in a marriage situation and the marriage constitution, I think we're all the same, on the same page with that.
Let's talk about the Senate a moment. So we need 10 votes. So far, only Susan Collins from Maine has said, I'm in favor of this. So right now it's 51-49, and we have the negotiation time. Very likely there are going to be others. Your gut is, are we going to get to 10?
It really depends on what people, just as you were talking about, what people in the states do. If people, the average person in this state, starts speaking up, and that person that sits in Congress realizes, I'm going to lose my next election unless I vote a certain way, because that's what they're paying attention to. They're watching Twitter like a hawk. And if all of a sudden they have 250,000 people writing, we're voting you out if you don't do this, they're going to make the decision based on their own job security.
Let's be sure.
That's true.
And it allows us, your soundbite allows us to frame this conversation of what's going to happen next. Perhaps a significant portion of LGBTQ South Florida America doesn't understand what you just said. 78% of all Americans support gay marriage. Right. This is not even close. There is no debate going on here. It's not even close. So the question is, in states like Iowa, where Iowa is even higher. I think it's in the mid 80s of support of gay marriage in Iowa. Those two senators, how are they going to go, hold on a second, I'm not in favor of this, when 82% of their constituents are in favor of it?
Right.
You think
Well,
that's going to be the issue?
part of it is what they choose to make as their talking point. You know, if they choose to deflect and talk about things that they think their constituency cares about more, that could be the part of their strategy. You know, I don't know what they're going to do. Or they,
at least when it comes to the red side of things, they tend to not be able to speak their mind. At least on the blue side of things, people can have their own minds and personalities. They have to fall in line behind the party. So if the party decides we're going to run for president based on Roe versus Wade and gay marriage, then they're going to have to vote whatever the party tells them to vote.
Who,
Even if it's
That's a
political
good point.
suicide.
what do you
Very
think about
true.
the comments that are going on that the Pelosi-Schumer approach here of the secret time bomb is really genius? Because it forced Congress to come out and say, I'm for this or I'm not for this. This is irrelevant. All other issues, this doesn't violate any state's rights. So we take Clarence Thomas out of the argument. If a state does it, if New York and California say gay marriage is the law and Massachusetts is the law, you just have to recognize those states. But we're not taking it away from anyone else. What do you think about the comments that are going on that that's a genius move? And now in the Senate, right before the midterms, it's going to make these senators, those 49 senators now, come out on the limb to say yes or no. What do y'all think about Pelosi and Schumer? You complimentary for them?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
It's part of the political game, and you have to get people on record, and you have to make them vote, and you have to get it in paper so that you can use it against them in the election, or at least hold them accountable to their words when things come up in the future.
Y'all agree with that?
Very
I agree with that. I do. And I think that they've got a good platform right now between the abortion, Roe versus Wade, and everything else. I just think that the country is angry because, like you said, 78% of the country agrees that gay marriage should remain legal. Most of the country believes in
90%.
abortion. 90%
believes in
Roe versus Wade. So they're going against the tide of popular opinion.
And another question I'm curious on your feeling today, because we're really taking a pulse of what's happened. I read a quite an extensive social media post today. Where's Donald Trump? Because if Donald Trump came out today and he said, I'm going to take the time to comment on this, he would say, I'm in favor of this new law for protection of gay marriage. So where is this fervent no, the 150-ish congressional Republicans that voted no? Who's driving and beating that?
Their
That's
donors,
my question,
political, religious right, political donors. It's a lot of money. They get a lot of money from a lot of religious organizations, and to lose that money would put them in jeopardy of being able to run. So.
Yeah, because
I think it's money.
Yeah, it seems to me very like, why reach back and go back to these? We finally got ahead and had these laws changed and in place. That was my question. Like, why are they reaching back suddenly with the
Wait, are we talking about women's rights now, or
everything?
Settled for 50 years and we're different. Last question before we move on. I'm really curious. I'm curious about the LGBTQ community. If this exact news, if yesterday afternoon we were on the air when this was happening, and it was our lead story yesterday, it's our lead story today. If this exact moment in Congress happened, that vote, that many Republicans to codify gay marriage happened in 2012, it would have been an all-stop conversation in the LGBTQ world, no matter what country on this planet you lived in. We got through it of going, yeah, okay. What does that say about us? We're not beating our chests. We're not saying we're getting those 9 votes no matter what. We're going to fight to the death over that. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
How come? Why is this not news?
I don't know. It's very frustrating. You know, a lot of us fought
Yes.
for a lot of years
Yeah.
to get to where we're at.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. For those that are fighting for everyone else's rights, you kind of wish they would show you the respect back and say, hey, you know, you've been doing this, we support you. But they just seem oblivious. And maybe it's just our community because but I just feel like they're more interested in going out and being on Grindr or going to the clubs or drinking and not as interested in until something's taken away from them.
Right.
They don't even recognize that it's going to hurt them.
Well,
This-
yeah, I
that's
think
what
that's
it
a big
is, yeah.
point is that a lot of the younger, we did a good job, right? There's a whole generation that has been raised without having to think about these things.
Exactly.
Right? They don't know what it's like to
Yeah.
not
Any
have them.
responsibility.
Right, right. They don't know what it's like to not have
Even
it.
having conversations with people come into the restaurant about the community itself, and you say, shouldn't you be more involved? It doesn't really affect me. Well, it does affect you. Like it
Right.
absolutely affects you, and I'm happy to like pull your food away so we can talk about this. It does make a difference, you know, and we take it for a lot of people take it for granted in our community that the rights that we have here in our part of Florida is the same rights people have across the country, and it is not.
Yeah.
Right.
And it is not, and it's
Right.
not in the state of Florida. Can we just bring up real quick when you're talking about our community and things going on? I don't know how many people have read, but PrEP has in the state of Florida, I mean in the state of Texas, the same gentleman that wrote the brief to overturn Roe versus Wade already put to the Texas Supreme Court that insurance companies can deny payment of PrEP. Right? So now, when they say this isn't going to affect you, you're going to get HIV.
The conclusion is
Like it's going to affect you.
matter.
Yeah.
that's, I think, for me, inside the LGBTQ community. The headline today is, why is this not news for the LGBT?
Right.
Right.
I think that
Right.
is the real headline. And by the way, I just have to say, and forever, it's one of the reasons why I love Bona, because the owner of Bona will take your food away to
I love that.
convince you
Got
why
the
you
power.
should be
I love
Exactly.
that.
You have the
Exactly.
power. You have the
100%.
food.
Right. Paul, let's talk about some religion. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.